If you have two different workbenches in your shop or two different work areas, a handy feature is to add a boom arm so you're not pulling your dust collector around the shop. Our boom arm has worked out so nice, we decided to build another. So today we're going to show you how to build it step by step for a sheet of plywood and about $50 in hardware. This is our new install location, and the first thing I did was took a tape measure and tried to figure out how much I wanted it to swing out. I figured on about 7 feet. I put together a design in SketchUp really quick so that I could import it into my VCarve software for cutting. We are going to be using a machine for this, but I'm going to cover the manual method. I'm fortunate enough to have a CNC in my shop, and I'm definitely going to use it on this project. But keep in mind that's not a requirement. The basic shapes that I'm cutting out could be cut out with a jigsaw, a circular saw, even a hand saw if you needed to. My guess is if you're watching this video, you probably have a nice collection of power tools and you could handle this part without a lot of instruction. I like to pull my dust collector hose off and clean off the bed before I start pulling pieces just to keep the mess down. And what we're doing here is just removing all of the excess pieces that we're not going to need. I like to use what I refer to as tabs for holding the pieces in place so I don't rely totally on the vac table. And to remove those, I have a cheap little multi-tool that works perfectly at cutting the 1/4 inch wood dots that hold it in place. It's not ultra high quality, but it does the job, and it's cheap enough that I can leave it dedicated to just sitting by the CNC. I'll leave a link to this tool in the description. And now we are left with currently a mess. So what I'm going to do is go through and pick out the pieces from the leftover and get rid of that. Now let's clean this off one more time just like it's a workbench, because in this case it is. Both of our workbenches have projects on them, and this will become our assembly space for this project. I recently broke my ultra smooth cutting combo bit for my CNC, so I had to use an up spiral bit, which leaves a little bit of tear out. So Cameron grabbed the palm sander and went around and basically took all the little wispies off the wood to make it nice and smooth. Cameron was doing such a good job sanding, I decided to just let him keep going with it, and I just acted like I was busy doing other things and just captured him sanding every once in a while, but he really got into it. Nice and smooth. The tools we're going to need for assembly are a pin nailer. I've got Titebond wood glue, one drill for pre-drilling, I've got one for screws, and then 1¼ inch wood screws. It's now time for assembly, always the exciting part. What we're doing here is basically making sure that we have all the pieces in the right direction and on the right side. And then Cameron starts with some wood glue and we run down the entire piece, and then he follows it up with his finger, the master applicator. Then he flips that side over and places it on the actual boom arm, and then we reapply the glue on the other side. We're basically making a boom arm sandwich with glue on both sides. This project right now is about as strong as a card house, but I'm going to show you how we're going to make it stronger. I used 2 of the pieces just to act as leg supports so that when we line up the part on Cameron's side and make sure it's dead on, it'll keep it from wanting to lean forward. Makes it a lot easier and we don't have to use any clamps. Cameron grabbed the pin nailer and started going down the assembly, making sure that it's lined up perfectly with the top edge. And I can't stress the importance of having a pin nailer. It's just like having a third hand in the shop. It saves you from using clamps, keeps everything held into place until you use stronger fasteners. So at this point, we're carefully trying to hold it together with our hands on both sides and get it flipped over to the other side so that we can nail in that top edge that he just finished on the other side. And while he's doing that, have I told you how much I love pin nailers, especially this one? Never had a jam, no air canister needed, just runs off the battery. It's a dream. This is the part of the assembly process where it's easy to make a mistake and put the brackets in the wrong place or the wrong direction. You can see I'm taking my time on this and making sure I have accounted for the right pieces. I haven't noted it, but we're using 1/2 inch plywood for this whole project, and I used it for my last one and it's plenty strong. But for the bottom bracket, we doubled it up so we'll get a full inch of width for strength. I found it a necessity to round over the back sides of the brackets. If you don't, when you swing it from left to right, the corners will definitely hit the wall. I think we're just about done with the pin nailer. Next step. Nope, I was wrong. One more piece. We're going to double up the top layer on this one as well. On my prototype, I did a single layer on the top and double on the bottom, but it won't hurt to add a little extra strength to this one. And now one more step, we have the beautiful arched bottom, which does not have to be an arch. It could just be an angle. It could even be a big rectangle that's long. It doesn't have to look that nice to function, but I really like the slow curve of this. Now, after gluing on both sides, Cameron and I are preparing for a well-coordinated, amazing display of synchronization working together. We start at the top, and I mark the location, and with the trusty pin nailer, I lock that piece in as Cameron holds it about where it goes. And then I slightly bend the half-inch plywood as we go down. Then Cameron grabs the pin nailer. It's like we've done this 100 times before. Goes together perfectly. Such a beautiful structure. Now, I know some are thinking, are we going to rely on pin nails and wood glue to hold this thing together? Absolutely not. Cameron grabs the drill with the pre-drill bit in it, and he starts going to town, drilling and putting in screws to lock these things in place. Now, it's really tricky with half-inch. You have to really get the angle dead on, or you could blow out the side or the top. But what we found is a very slight back angle away from the structure really locks the screws in perfectly, and we actually didn't have any that blew out. So Cameron took care of this whole side, and I thought I'd let him do it so he could appreciate how much work it was. Then we flipped it over, and I did all the pre-drilling when he did the screws, and we did it at about double speed. Test fit and problem. I made it the exact size of the pipe. Here's a trick if you ever want to use a hole saw and you don't have the pilot bit to guide it. I just take a scrap piece of wood and I use it to make the hole and made sure it fit in the pipe. Then I clamp that onto the place that I messed up on, making sure that the hole is the same space all the way around. This gives a guide for the hole saw and lets it cut through without rocking all over the place. It works great. To prepare for the install, we have to remove the Powermatic air cleaner and find another place for it. It's worked great, but it can go in other places and the boom arm cannot. To hang the boom arm, we're going to use galvanized hot or cold, which is black or silver pipe that's pre-threaded. We use 2 90s, then we grab 2 floor flanges, followed by 1 pre-threaded 18-inch 1-inch pipe. This is where we thought we were going to pre-assemble the hardware and realized we bought female-to-female end. So Cameron ran back to the store and picked up a 1-inch male-to-male pipe nipple so that we could connect the two together. And we were back on track. I'm going to show you the concept, and there's a lot of different ways to apply it to your situation. Because there's 2 of us, we plan on pre-assembling as much as possible and raising it into place, but you could also screw the assembly shown here onto the wall and then slide it on top of it and lock it in instead of doing it on the bench, if that makes sense. But the way we're doing it is to pre-assemble it. Now, it's really tempting when you put the top on to just really crank it down, but let me tell you, you don't want to do that. Bring it down to about 75% of the threads and then stop when it faces the same direction as the one below. Cameron didn't completely understand this tip, and he did exactly what I just said not to do, and he was convinced he could pull it on around, but I was like, no, you can't. No, you can't. No, you can't. And finally, he accepted it and turned it the other way. It's finally time to put this thing up on the wall and put it to use. Now, like I said, there's a lot of different ways to do this. We decided, because there's 2 of us, just to put the whole thing up at the same time. But if you had hide ceilings, you could put the bottom on and then slide that on and then lock it on the top. But it's nice just to be able to put the whole thing up at the same time. Of course, it's important to put the screws into the studs. I have 2 on each bracket, top and bottom, and it's plenty strong enough to hold, because we're basically talking about it just holding a dust collection hose and a power cord. Got to test that first swing. So cool. Got to test it again. Love it. Next step is to thread a dust collection hose through, and I'm currently using 2 together, but I have 1 on order that's longer. And the main goal is for it to come out the front and be able to go down and reach the dust collector. Here's the second hose that I was referring to. Very temporary. I think a small project I'm going to take on after this is to mount this back on a shelf up here. It'll allow us to reach out and be able to touch the controls, and it'll also keep the floor space empty. I just love projects like this that can be completed in a day and greatly increase your productivity. We're able to work now from the back of the boat to the front without moving the dust collector around. Hope you can try this project on for your own shop. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments. And I think Cameron just went downstairs, and we don't have any. Thanks for watching.